My name is Claire. I'm 32 years old, and I never thought my beloved lake house would become a battlefield. The peaceful retreat my parents left me was supposed to be my sanctuary. Instead, I found the door unlocked, the house full of strangers, and my sister-in-law Jessica screaming at me like I was an intruder. "Why is this stupid Leech here? Get out," I just smiled and said, "Okay." I still remember the look on her face when I finally took action. If you're curious about what happened next, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and subscribe to see my whole journey. The lake house had always been special to my family. My parents worked extra shifts for years to afford it, dad as a construction foreman and mom as a nurse. They bought it when I was just 8 years old. A modest 2-bedroom cabin with weathered wood siding and huge windows overlooking Lake Arrowhead. It wasn't fancy, but those panoramic views of crystal clear water and pine trees made it feel like paradise. Every weekend during summer and many winter weekends too, we'd pack up the car and make the 3-hour drive from our suburban home. My brother Thomas, 4 years older than me, would complain about leaving his friends behind, but once we arrived, he'd be the first one racing to the dock to jump in the water or set up fishing gear. Those were the golden days. Mom would cook her famous blueberry pancakes on Saturday mornings while Dad fixed whatever needed repairing around the property. Thomas taught me to swim, fish, and kayak in that lake. During thunderstorms, we'd huddle on the screened porch counting seconds between lightning and thunder while Mom told stories from her childhood. Thomas and I were close back then. He was protective, always checking the depth before letting me dive, always making sure I wore my life jacket. At night, we'd stay up whispering about school friends and our dreams while our parents slept. He wanted to be an architect designing buildings that would touch the sky. I wanted to work with computers, fascinated by how they could connect people across the world. As we grew older, we both chased those dreams. Thomas got his architecture degree and joined a respected firm in the city. I became an IT consultant specializing in network security for financial institutions. We both moved to different cities, but always reunited at the lake house on holidays and for our parents' anniversary celebration every July. Things changed 3 years ago. It was a rainy Tuesday in October when I got the call. Mom and Dad had been driving back from the lake house when a truck lost control on the wet highway. They died instantly. The world crumbled beneath my feet that day. Thomas and I leaned on each other through the funeral and the painful weeks that followed. We sorted through our childhood home, dividing mementos, donating clothes, and trying to process the reality that our parents were gone forever. The lake house stood empty that winter, neither of us having the heart to visit without Mom and Dad. That was also when Thomas met Jessica. She was a client at his firm, a real estate developer with expensive tastes and ambitious plans. They dated for just 5 months before getting married in an extravagant ceremony that felt rushed and impersonal. I tried to be happy for him, but something about Jessica always felt off to me. She seemed to view relationships as transactions, people as assets or liabilities. After the wedding, Thomas changed. Our weekly calls dwindled to monthly, then barely at all. When we did speak, Jessica was always there, hovering in the background, monitoring our conversations. If I mentioned the lake house, she'd make a comment about family properties and fair distribution. 6 months after their wedding came, the reading of our parents' will. Thomas and I sat in the lawyer's office, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Jessica insisted on attending, though I didn't understand why. The lawyer, Dr. Gerald Hoffman, an old friend of our father, looked uncomfortable as he adjusted his glasses and began reading. To our son Thomas, we leave our primary residence and its contents, along with our retirement savings. The house in the suburbs was worth significantly more than the lake house, and the retirement accounts contained nearly $300,000. To our daughter Claire, we leave our vacation property at Lake Arrowhead and the family photo albums. I wasn't surprised. Thomas had always preferred city living while I treasured the peace of the lake. What did surprise me was the immediate flash of anger on Thomas's face and the calculating look that crossed Jessica's. "That's not fair," Jessica said before Thomas could speak. "The lake house should be divided between both children." Dr. Hoffman looked over his glasses at her. "Mrs. Walsh, your in-laws were very clear about their wishes. The properties are of comparable value, and they wanted each child to have a home that suited their personalities." Jessica wasn't satisfied. As we left the office, she cornered me in the parking lot. "You manipulated them, didn't you? Always playing the perfect daughter while Thomas worked his ass off in the real world." That's not true, I protested, shocked by the accusation. Mom and Dad were fair. Thomas got the main house and their savings. A lake house appreciates faster than a suburban home, she snapped. You knew exactly what you were doing. Thomas stood silently beside her, not defending me, not meeting my eyes. That silence hurt more than Jessica's accusations. Before they drove away, Jessica called over her shoulder. Don't think this is over. That house belongs to both of you. Over the following months, Jessica spread rumors within our extended family. According to her, I had convinced our parents to change their will just before they died. She told our cousins I had always been the favorite child who got everything I wanted. None of it was true, but Thomas never contradicted her version of events. Slowly, family members began treating me differently, conversations becoming strained at gatherings. I threw myself into my work, taking on additional projects to keep my mind occupied. The lake house became my weekend retreat, the only place I felt connected to my parents and free from judgment. I'd sit on the dock at sunset, imagining Mom and Dad beside me, hoping they knew I treasured their gift. I spent my savings updating the place, replacing the leaky roof, installing a new water heater, and refinishing the hardwood floors. Every improvement was done with care and respect for the original character. I wanted to preserve what my parents had loved while making it fully mine. My job as an IT security consultant kept me constantly on alert. I spent my days hunting for vulnerabilities in banking systems, patching holes before hackers could exploit them, and training staff to recognize phishing attempts. The work was demanding, often stressful, but I excelled at it. My clients trusted me to protect their most sensitive data, and I took that responsibility seriously. Between 60-hour work weeks and frequent travel to client sites, the lake house became my sanctuary. Every other weekend, I'd drive up Friday night and stay until Sunday afternoon. Those 48 hours of peace restored my energy and cleared my mind. I'd wake with the sun, have coffee on the porch, and spend hours hiking nearby trails or kayaking across the glassy morning water. At night, I'd build a small fire in the pit my dad had made, watching stars appear while listening to the gentle lapping of waves against the shore. 3 months after the will reading, Jessica called me for the first time. Her voice dripped with fake sweetness. "Claire, how are you doing with everything?" "I'm managing," I replied cautiously. "That's good to hear. Listen, Thomas and I wanted to use the lake house next weekend. His firm is entertaining some Japanese clients, and the location would really impress them. Not can we use it, but we want to use it. No acknowledgement that it was my property. I was planning to be there next weekend, I said. Surely you can skip one weekend. This deal could mean a promotion for Thomas. I hesitated. Maybe this was an olive branch, a chance to repair the relationship with my brother. All right, but please leave it as you find it. Of course, we're not animals, she laughed. When I arrived the following weekend, the house was a disaster. Empty beer bottles littered the porch. The kitchen sink overflowed with dirty dishes. Someone had spilled red wine on my mother's handmade quilt. Cigarette burns marked the wooden deck railing despite the clear no smoking signs I had posted. It took me the entire weekend to clean up their mess instead of enjoying my usual peaceful retreat. 2 weeks later, Jessica called again. Her cousin was getting married and they wanted to host a small rehearsal dinner at the lake house. Again, I reluctantly agreed. Again, I returned to chaos, broken glasses, stains on the sofa, and a cracked window no one had bothered to mention. The third time she called it was for her sister's baby shower. By now, I recognized the pattern, but still hoped Thomas might remember how much the house had meant to both of us. I agreed on the condition that Thomas would be present and responsible for the cleanup. Jessica promised he would be. He wasn't. I arrived to find crushed cake in the carpet gift wrapping scattered everywhere, and diaper-themed decorations still hanging from every surface. The garbage hadn't been taken out, and 3 days of summer heat had created an unbearable stench. One of the guests had even left a dirty diaper on the back porch. I called Thomas, my patience exhausted. You promised you'd clean up, I reminded him. Sorry, we had to leave early. Jessica had a migraine. This is the third time, Thomas. I can't keep cleaning up after you guys. You're being dramatic. It's just a little mess. A broken window isn't a little mess. Neither is wine on Mom's quilt or cigarette burns on the railing. Look, his voice hardened. If you're going to be selfish about the lake house, just say so. Don't agree to let us use it and then complain afterward. I was stunned by the unfairness of his accusation. I'm not being selfish. I'm asking for basic respect for my property. Your property, Dad would have wanted us to share it. That's not what their will said, Thomas, and Dad would have wanted his belongings treated with care, not trashed. He hung up without responding. I sat on the porch steps and cried, mourning not just my parents now, but also the brother I had loved and lost. 6 months passed without contact from either Thomas or Jessica. I focused on my career, taking on a major security overhaul for First National Bank's West Coast branches. The project was all-consuming, requiring 16-hour days and constant problem-solving. By the time we successfully launched the new system, I was physically and mentally drained. My boss recognized my exhaustion and insisted I take 2 weeks of paid vacation. You've earned it, Claire. Go recharge at that lake house you're always talking about. I planned my perfect recovery retreat, sleeping late, swimming in the cool lake, reading the stack of novels I'd been collecting, and maybe even trying out the paddleboard I'd bought but never used. I declined 3 client requests and set a proper out-of-office message for the first time in years. This vacation was non-negotiable. 2 days before my departure, Thomas called. The sound of his number lighting up my phone sent a wave of anxiety through me. Claire, he sounded unusually warm. How have you been? We made awkward small talk for a few minutes before he got to his real reason for calling. So Madison's birthday is coming up. She's turning 5 next week. Madison was his daughter from a previous relationship. I sent her gifts on birthdays and Christmas, but rarely saw her since Jessica limited their visits. I know. I already mailed her present, I said. That's not why I'm calling. Jessica wants to throw her a special party just one day at the lake. Madison's been talking about swimming all summer. My heart sank. Thomas, I'm starting vacation next week. I'll be at the lake house the whole time. Just one day, Claire. Tuesday afternoon. We'll be out by evening, I promise. Madison really wants a lake party, and you know Jessica and I can't afford a rental right now. That was another sore point. Thomas had lost his position at the prestigious firm 6 months earlier, something about missed deadlines and client complaints. He was now working freelance while Jessica continued spending as if nothing had changed. I don't know. Please, Claire, for Madison. We won't make a mess. I'll personally make sure everything is cleaned up. You won't even know we were there. I thought of my niece, an innocent child caught between adult conflicts. Fine. Tuesday only, and you need to be out by 6 o'clock. I mean it, Thomas. Absolutely. 6 o'clock clean as a whistle. Thank you, Claire. This means a lot. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe my brother was still somewhere inside the man Jessica had molded. After wrapping up my last day of work before vacation, I packed my car with everything I'd need for 2 blissful weeks at the lake. Groceries, new bath towels, books, hiking gear, and my laptop. Not for work, but for evening movies on the carsesov.com. Porch. The 3-hour drive stretched to 5 due to unexpected construction and Friday traffic, but my spirits remained high. Freedom was just ahead. The sun was setting as I turned onto the gravel road leading to my property, painting the sky in stunning shades of orange and purple. The stress of recent months began melting away with each familiar landmark. The old oak with the crooked branch, the wooden bridge over the creek, the mailbox my father had hand-painted with our family name. As I rounded the final bend, my heart stopped. The clearing in front of my lake house was filled with cars, at least 10 vehicles parked haphazardly on the grass. Music blasted from open windows, and the glow of string lights illuminated figures moving around the yard. This can't be happening, I whispered, gripping the steering wheel tighter. Tuesday was 5 days away. Today was Thursday. I parked behind a red SUV I didn't recognize and approached my own house like a stranger. Through the large front windows, I could see people, lots of people, lounging on my furniture, eating, drinking, laughing. My mother's antique coffee table held pizza boxes and beer bottles. Someone had moved my father's favorite reading chair to make room for what appeared to be a makeshift bar. Taking a deep breath, I unlocked the front door with trembling hands. The noise hit me first. Music, conversations, children squealing, then the smell of unfamiliar perfumes, cooking odors, and spilled alcohol. I counted at least 15 people spread throughout the open-plan living area and kitchen. None of them were Thomas. A woman I'd never seen before noticed me first. "Hey, who are you?" she called over the music. Before I could answer, Jessica emerged from the kitchen, a glass of red wine dangerously full in her manicured hand. She froze when she saw me, her heavily made-up eyes widening before narrowing into slits. "Why is this stupid Leech here? Get out," she shouted loud enough to silence conversations and turn all heads in my direction. The room fell quiet except for the music still thumping from speakers I now noticed had replaced my small bookshelf. "This is my house," I said quietly, still trying to process the scene before me. "Your house?" Jessica laughed, a harsh sound devoid of humor. "Don't be ridiculous. We rented this place for 2 weeks." She turned to the crowd. "This is Thomas's crazy sister. She thinks she owns every property in the family." An older woman who resembled Jessica frowned at me. Jessica said this was their vacation home. "It's not," I stated firmly, looking around at the unfamiliar faces. "This house belongs to me. It was left to me in my parents' will 3 years ago." Jessica marched toward me, wine sloshing over the rim of her glass onto my hardwood floors. "You need to leave, now. We have a rental agreement." "A rental agreement? With whom I never rented this property to anyone." "We have paperwork," Jessica snapped, gesturing vaguely toward the kitchen. "This is all legal." I pushed past her into the kitchen where more strangers sat around my dining table. On the counter lay a printed document with what appeared to be my signature at the bottom. I snatched it up immediately, recognizing the forgery. The signature was close, but missed the distinctive way I crossed my T's, a detail Jessica wouldn't have known. "This is fake," I said, turning to face the crowd that had followed me. "I never signed this. Where's Thomas?" "He's in the city working," Jessica said dismissively. "Unlike some people who can take 2-week vacations whenever they want." I pulled out my phone and dialed Thomas. No answer. I tried again. Voicemail. I sent a text, "I'm at the lake house. There are people everywhere. What's going on?" "We've been here for a week already," Jessica announced proudly. "And we're staying another week. My entire family came out for our annual reunion. Thomas said it would be no problem." I looked around at the unfamiliar faces, Jessica's parents, siblings, cousins, nieces, and nephews, all watching this confrontation with uncomfortable expressions. None of them seemed aware they were trespassing. "Thomas had no right to offer this house to anyone," I said, as calmly as I could manage. "He doesn't own it. He doesn't have keys. How did you even get in?" Jessica smirked. "Thomas had copies made years ago. Did you really think he'd just let you take the family vacation home? He's been letting us use it whenever you're not here." The betrayal hit like a physical blow. My own brother had been sneaking into my house behind my back. That explained the occasionally moved furniture, the missing bottles of wine, the unfamiliar coffee mug I'd found in the dishwasher. "Claire's always been the freeloader," Jessica continued, addressing her audience now. "Her parents paid for her college, her first apartment, everything. Thomas had to work for every penny. Now she's living in luxury while my husband struggles to find consistent work." I'd heard enough lies. My parents left Thomas their primary home and retirement accounts. I got the lake house. It was a fair division. "Fair," Jessica scoffed. "You manipulated them just before they died." "That's not true," I protested, feeling tears threatening. "The will was written 5 years before their accident." "Sure it was," Jessica rolled her eyes. "Look, we're not leaving. We paid a cleaning service to come next Friday. You can have your precious house back then." My phone remained silent. Thomas wasn't coming to my rescue. I looked around at my violated home, at the strangers using my parents' belongings, at Jessica's triumphant expression. Something inside me hardened. I wouldn't cry. I wouldn't beg. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction. "Okay," I said quietly. "I'll leave." Jessica looked surprised, then pleased. Well, good. Finally showing some family consideration. I walked out without another word, Jessica's laughter following me to my car. As I pulled away, I could see them already returning to their party through the windows, dismissing the interruption. But what Jessica didn't understand yet was that okay didn't mean I was giving up. It meant I was done playing nice. The Pineview Motel, 20 minutes from my lake house, had seen better days, but it was clean and the elderly owner didn't ask questions when I checked in looking shell-shocked. I collapsed onto the faded floral bedspread, finally allowing the tears to come. They weren't just tears of anger or frustration, but of deep grief. I mourned the brother I'd lost, the family bond that had been severed, and the violation of the space my parents had lovingly created. Sleep evaded me that night. I paced the small room, replaying Jessica's words, the fake rental agreement, the casual way she'd claimed my property. Around 3 in the morning, something shifted inside me. The hurt transformed into resolve. I was done being the accommodating sister who gave in to avoid conflict. I opened my laptop and began researching. First, I pulled up the property deed, confirming what I already knew: the lake house was solely in my name. Next, I reviewed local trespassing laws and the legal remedies available to me. Finally, I searched for attorneys specializing in property disputes and family law. By sunrise, I had a plan and a list of professionals to contact. I started with Patricia Lawson, a no-nonsense attorney recommended by a colleague who'd gone through a difficult divorce. Despite the early hour, Patricia answered her emergency line. "This constitutes criminal trespassing and forgery," she stated after hearing my story. "The fake rental agreement elevates this significantly. I can file emergency proceedings today, but we should also involve local law enforcement." Next, I called Blue Mountain Security, a private firm that handled vacation properties in the area. Within an hour, I had arranged for 2 security officers to meet me later that day. Finally, I contacted the Lake County Sheriff's Department to file a formal complaint. Deputy Wilson sounded skeptical initially. "Family disputes can be complicated, ma'am." "This isn't a dispute," I clarified. "My house has been illegally occupied by people who forged my signature on a fake rental agreement. I have all the documentation proving my ownership." His tone changed. "I'll send an officer to meet you there at noon." Before heading back to the lake house, I made one final call to my boss, explaining the situation and requesting an additional week of vacation. He was surprisingly understanding. "Take the time you need, Claire. We can postpone the Johnson project. Just document everything for potential legal action." At 11:30, I parked at the end of my driveway, where Patricia Lawson, 2 Blue Mountain security officers, and Deputy Rogers from the Sheriff's Department waited. I provided each with copies of my documentation: the property deed, my parents' will, photos of the forged rental agreement, and text messages from Thomas confirming Tuesday's arrangement. "Let me handle the initial contact," Deputy Rogers advised. "I'll explain the legal situation and give them 1 hour to vacate the premises. The security team can supervise their departure." Walking back up my driveway felt different this time. I wasn't a shocked victim, but a property owner asserting my rights. The party appeared to be continuing, music still played, and I could see people swimming off my dock. Jessica opened the door, mimosa in hand, her smile vanishing when she saw my companions. "What is this?" she demanded. Deputy Rogers stepped forward, introducing himself and explaining the situation in clear professional terms. "This property is legally owned by Claire Walsh. You and your guests are trespassing and must vacate the premises within 1 hour." Jessica's face flushed. "This is ridiculous. We have a rental agreement." She turned to me. "You're really doing this, making a scene with cops because you're jealous of our family gathering." "May I see this rental agreement?" Patricia asked calmly. When Jessica produced the forged document, Patricia pointed out the inconsistencies and legal deficiencies. "This document has no legal standing. Furthermore, forging a signature is a criminal offense." Jessica's mother appeared behind her. "What's happening?" "They're trying to throw us out," Jessica spat. Claire called the police on her own family. "Mrs. Walsh is the legal owner," Deputy Rogers repeated patiently. "You have 1 hour to collect your belongings and leave." "Call Thomas," Jessica's mother suggested. "He'll clear this up." Jessica pulled out her phone, stepping away to make the call. I could hear her urgent whispers, though not the specific words. When she returned, her expression had changed to one of calculation. "Thomas is on his way," she announced. "He says there's been a misunderstanding." "The documentation is quite clear," Patricia stated. "There is no misunderstanding about who owns this property." While we waited for Thomas, Deputy Rogers and the security team, supervised as Jessica's family, reluctantly began gathering their belongings. Some shot me dirty looks. Others seemed embarrassed, quietly apologizing as they passed. Jessica's father pulled me aside. "We truly believed this was their property," he said quietly. Jessica told us they inherited it last year. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. The depth of Jessica's deception was still unfolding. Thomas arrived 45 minutes later, his car spraying gravel as he braked hard in the driveway. He jumped out, face red with anger. "What the hell, Claire?" he shouted, storming toward me. "You called the cops on our family." "Step back, sir," one of the security officers warned, moving between us. Thomas looked around wildly, taking in the scene. Half the cars already packed Jessica's relatives, carrying suitcases and coolers to their vehicles. Deputy Rogers documenting the situation. "You've gone too far this time," he growled at me. "I've gone too far," I repeated incredulously. "You made duplicate keys without my permission. You let Jessica forge my signature. You lied to her entire family about who owns this property. We were just using it. It's not like you're here all the time." "It's my house, Thomas. Mine. If you wanted to use it, you should have asked honestly, not sneaked around behind my back." Patricia stepped forward. "Mr. Walsh, your sister has been extremely restrained in her response. Unauthorized entry, forgery, and property damage could result in serious criminal charges." "Property damage," Thomas echoed. I gestured toward the house. "Go look for yourself. Stains on furniture, broken items, walls needing repainting." Thomas ran a hand through his hair, suddenly looking less certain. "Jessica said they were being careful." "They weren't," I said simply. "They never are." As the final cars pulled away, Jessica approached us, her perfect makeup, unable to hide her fury. "This isn't over," she hissed at me. "You've just declared war." "No," I corrected her. "You declared war when you broke into my house and tried to steal it from me. I'm just defending what's legally mine." Thomas looked between us, conflict evident on his face. For a moment, I glimpsed my brother, the real Thomas, not Jessica's puppet, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. "Let's go," he muttered to Jessica, leading her to their car. As they drove away, I turned to face my lake house. Through the windows, I could see the aftermath of their occupation: furniture, out-of-place trash piled in corners, stains on my mother's rugs. The damage was extensive, but it was mine again. "We'll continue with the restraining order," Patricia advised, "and document all damages for the lawsuit." I nodded, a strange calm settling over me. "Thank you, all of you." After they left, I stood alone on the porch, keys in hand, reclaiming my sanctuary one deep breath at a time. The damage to my lake house was worse than I'd initially realized. Beyond the obvious mess of food waste and empty bottles, there were deeper, more permanent violations. Someone had carved initials into my grandmother's antique dining table. Red wine had soaked through the living room carpet to the hardwood beneath. Cigarette burns marred the bathroom countertop. In the guest bedroom, a child had used crayons to create a colorful mural across an entire wall. I documented everything, meticulously photographing each item from multiple angles, while creating a spreadsheet of replacement and repair costs. The total quickly climbed into thousands of dollars. Patricia advised me to hire a professional cleaning service and restoration company, adding their invoices to our growing case file. 3 days into this process, while I was meeting with a carpenter about replacing damaged porch railings, Thomas's truck roared up the driveway. He emerged alone, slamming the door hard enough to shake the vehicle. "We need to talk," he announced, stomping toward me. The carpenter looked concerned, but I assured him I was fine. "Give us a few minutes, please." As soon as we were alone on the porch, Thomas unleashed his fury. "You've lost your mind, Claire. Do you know what you've done? Jessica's parents have canceled their financial help with our mortgage. Her sister isn't speaking to her. You humiliated our entire family." "Our family?" I repeated quietly. "Thomas, you haven't treated me like family in years. You broke into my house, let Jessica forge my signature, and stood by while she destroyed Mom and Dad's things." "It's not just your house," he shouted, pounding his fist against the porch railing. "Mom and Dad never meant for you to keep it all to yourself. They wanted us to share it. That's not what their will said. Because they didn't know what would happen. They always favored you, Claire. Always. The perfect daughter who could do no wrong. The brilliant one with the fancy job and perfect life." His words stung, revealing a resentment I'd never fully understood. "Is that really what you think, that Mom and Dad favored me?" "Of course they did. Dad paid for your computer science degree while I worked through college. Mom always bragged about your accomplishments but barely mentioned mine. Thomas, they paid for both our educations. And Mom had a scrapbook dedicated to your architectural designs. She showed it to everyone who visited. He shook his head dismissively. You don't get it. You never did. You were the special one, and now you're punishing me for finally having something good in my life. Jessica, I couldn't keep the disbelief from my voice. Yes, Jessica, she supports me, believes in me. She's the only one who sees what I'm capable of. I thought of Thomas's lost job, the rumors of missed deadlines and unprofessional behavior that had circulated through industry contacts. I thought of Jessica's expensive tastes and the growing debt I suspected they carried. Thomas, I've always believed in you. But breaking into my house and lying isn't the answer to whatever you're going through. Save your condescension, he snapped. Jessica was right about you. You've always been selfish. Is that what she tells you? She tells me the truth. That's more than I can say for you. I took a deep breath, trying a different approach. Why didn't you just ask me honestly if you wanted to use the lake house? Why the secrecy and lies? Something flickered in his eyes, shame perhaps, but it hardened quickly. Because you would have said no. You don't know that. I know how you are. Everything has to be on your terms. The conversation was going nowhere. Why are you really here, Thomas? His expression shifted to something more calculated. To warn you, we're not backing down. Jessica has already talked to a lawyer. We're going to contest the will. 3 years after probate. On what grounds? Undue influence. We can prove you manipulated Mom and Dad. That's ridiculous, and you know it. I studied my brother's face, searching for the person I once knew. Thomas, is this really what you want, to drag our parents' memory through a legal battle based on lies? What I want is what's fair. Half of this property should be mine. And if you get half, then what Jessica sells it to fund her shopping habit. This place meant something to Mom and Dad. It means something to me. Don't pretend you care about their memory when you're treating their son like a criminal. You made duplicate keys without permission and entered my property illegally. That is criminal behavior. Thomas's face flushed darker. This isn't over, Claire, not by a long shot. He turned to leave, then spun back. Jessica was right about one more thing. You've always been alone, and you always will be. Nobody wants to deal with your control issues and superiority complex. He stormed back to his truck and peeled away, leaving me shaking on the porch. The carpenter approached cautiously. Everything okay, miss? I nodded, not trusting my voice immediately. Family disagreement. Let's get back to those repair estimates. That evening, I received an email from Patricia. Thomas and Jessica had indeed consulted an attorney about contesting the will, but the lawyer had apparently told them they had no case. Instead, they were now threatening to sue me for emotional distress and public humiliation. More concerning were the social media posts Patricia forwarded from Jessica's accounts. She had shared a heavily edited version of events portraying me as a mentally unstable recluse who had called SWAT teams on children at a birthday party. The post had dozens of sympathetic comments, including several from mutual acquaintances who should have known better. I was beginning my own social media damage control when my phone pinged with notifications, several text messages from unknown numbers. Heartless bitch. How could you do that to your own family? Selfish witch. Hope you enjoy your empty house alone. Jessica had apparently shared my number with her supporters. I blocked each one, then changed my number entirely. The next morning, I decided to check on the boathouse, which I hadn't had time to inspect yet. As I unlocked the padlock, a nauseating smell hit me. Inside, I discovered why. The small refrigerator where I kept bait and drinks had been unplugged, leaving the contents to rot in summer heat. Worse, someone had taken a knife to my kayak, slashing it repeatedly. On the wall, written in what appeared to be lipstick, were the words, "Selfish bitch." I photographed everything before cleaning, adding the images to Patricia's growing file. Later that day, as I was replanting flower beds that had been trampled, my nearest neighbor, Gary Peterson, walked over from his property 200 yards away. "Claire, I've been meaning to come by," he said, looking uncomfortable. I should have said something sooner, but I wasn't sure it was my place. "About what, Gary?" "Your brother and that wife of his? They've been using your place regularly for months. Big parties, lots of cars. I assumed you knew that maybe you were renting it to them." "I had no idea," I admitted. "How often were they here?" at least 2 weekends a month since spring. Sometimes just them, sometimes with large groups. He hesitated. There's something else. I overheard his wife talking on the phone on their deck about 2 weeks ago. She was discussing turning this place into some kind of event venue, talking about booking fees and capacity. My blood ran cold. An event venue. Gary nodded. She said something about how lakefront wedding venues can charge premium rates. I thought maybe you were in on the plan. Absolutely not. I figured as much from all the commotion the other day. He handed me his phone. I took some photos of some of their gatherings in case they were damaging your property. Neighbor looking out for neighbor. You know. The photos showed my deck crowded with people I didn't recognize, temporary event tents set up on my lawn, and what appeared to be a wedding ceremony being conducted on my dock. In one image, Jessica stood proudly beside a small chalkboard sign that read Walsh Lake Weddings and Events. They were running a business out of my house, I whispered, stunned by the audacity. Seemed that way, Gary agreed. I can email you these photos if they help. They definitely will. Thank you, Gary. After he left, I searched online for Walsh Lake Weddings and found a now deactivated Facebook page with additional photos of my property being used for commercial events. According to the information section, they had been operating for 3 months, charging between $1,000 and $3,000 per event. I forwarded everything to Patricia, who called me immediately. This changes things significantly, she said. Operating an unlicensed business, tax implications, zoning violations. We're moving beyond civil trespassing into potential fraud charges. The realization of how calculated Jessica's actions had been, this wasn't just about family use, but a deliberate business scheme, hardened my resolve further. This wasn't a misunderstanding or a family dispute. This was theft on multiple levels. My phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. Hope you're happy now that you've destroyed our business. Sleep well knowing you've ruined lives. We won't forget this. Jay. I forwarded it to Patricia and blocked the number. That night, I sat on the dock with a glass of wine, watching moonlight ripple across the lake. Despite everything, this place still brought me peace. Jessica Thomas, the legal battle, they couldn't take that away from me. This was my home, and I would defend it. The preliminary court hearing was scheduled for August 17th, exactly 26 days after I discovered Jessica and her family in my house. Patricia had assembled an impressive case, photographs of damage testimony from Gary and other neighbors, copies of the Walsh Lake Weddings promotional materials, and the forged rental agreement. We were suing for trespassing, property damage, forgery, and unauthorized commercial use of private property. Thomas and Jessica arrived at the courthouse with their attorney, Maxwell Burns, a flamboyant litigator known for theatrical courtroom performances. Jessica had dressed conservatively in a navy blue suit, her usually elaborate makeup, toned-down hair, pulled into a modest bun. Thomas looked uncomfortable in a tie that seemed to be choking him, eyes darting around the room without meeting mine. Jessica's parents sat directly behind them, along with her sister and brother-in-law. On my side of the courtroom, just me and Patricia. My stomach twisted at the visual, them with family support, me alone. Jessica smirked when she noticed it too. Judge Eleanor Martinez called the court to order reviewing the documents before addressing both parties. I've examined the filings in this case, and I have some initial concerns. She began, peering over her glasses at Burns. Mr. Burns, your client's countersuit for emotional distress appears to lack substantive evidence, particularly in light of the documented trespassing and property damage. Burns stood straightening his bright red tie. Your Honor, my clients were operating under the good faith belief that they had permission to use the property. Mr. Walsh, as the brother of the plaintiff, had historical access rights that were suddenly and capriciously revoked. Patricia rose calmly. Your Honor, no such historical access rights existed. The property was deeded solely to my client following her parents' death 3 years ago. Furthermore, we have evidence that the defendants were not merely using the property for family gatherings, but were operating an unlicensed commercial enterprise. Judge Martinez frowned. A commercial enterprise? Patricia presented the Walsh Lake Weddings materials, explaining how Jessica and Thomas had been charging for events at my property without permission, licensing, or proper insurance. The judge's expression darkened as she examined the evidence. Mr. Burns, Were you aware of these activities? Burns appeared genuinely surprised, glancing back at his clients with a questioning look. Jessica whispered urgently in his ear. Your Honor, any events hosted were merely to cover maintenance costs of a shared family property. My clients believed they were operating with implicit permission as family members. There was no implicit permission, I stated firmly when my turn came to testify. I explicitly denied their request to use the property during my vacation. They entered using unauthorized duplicate keys and presented a forged rental agreement to their guests. The most damning testimony came from an unexpected source. Midway through the proceedings, Burns called Jessica's younger sister, Megan, to testify about the family gathering. But under cross-examination by Patricia, Megan's story unraveled. Miss Lawson, did your sister ever show you documentation proving her right to use the property? Megan shifted uncomfortably. She said it belonged to her and Thomas. Did she specifically mention it was Claire Walsh's property that they were using with permission? No, Megan admitted. She said they had inherited it. And did you witness any commercial events taking place at the property? Megan glanced at Jessica, who stared back with a warning in her eyes. Miss Reynolds, you're under oath, Judge Martinez reminded her. Megan's shoulders slumped. Yes, Jessica hosted a wedding there in June. She charged the couple $2,500. Jessica's gasp was audible throughout the courtroom. Burns quickly requested a recess to confer with his clients, but the damage was done. When court resumed 30 minutes later, Burns announced they were withdrawing their countersuit and were prepared to discuss settlement terms. Judge Martinez wasn't satisfied. Before we address settlements, I want to be clear about what happened here. Mrs. Walsh, she addressed Jessica. Directly, did you forge a rental agreement using the plaintiff's name? Jessica's face had lost its composed mask. It wasn't exactly forgery. I was helping Thomas access what should have been partly his. That's not what I asked. Did you sign Claire Walsh's name to a document without her permission? After a long pause, Jessica whispered, yes. And did you operate a commercial business on her property without permission? It was just a few events. Yes or no, Mrs. Walsh? Yes, Jessica admitted, tears forming. Judge Martinez turned to Thomas. And you, Mr. Walsh, did you make duplicate keys to your sister's property without permission? Thomas looked like he might be sick. Yes, Your Honor. Did you know about the commercial activities your wife was conducting? His eyes flickered to Jessica, then back to the judge. I knew she hosted some events, but I didn't know the details. I was working in the city most weekends. Jessica's head snapped toward him, betrayal written across her face. You absolute coward, she hissed. Burns quickly intervened, but not before several people heard the exchange. Jessica's parents looked shocked, whispering to each other with disturbed expressions. The judge called another recess, instructing both legal teams to discuss settlement terms. In the hallway, I overheard Jessica berating Thomas. You threw me under the bus, after everything I've done to fix your failures. You told me we had permission, Thomas responded, his voice uncharacteristically firm. You said Claire had agreed to let us use the place. I never knew about the wedding business, Jess. Never. Of course I had to lie to you. You're too weak to do what needs to be done. Your perfect little sister gets everything while you get nothing, and you just accept it. That's not true. Mom and Dad gave me the house and their retirement accounts, which you've nearly bankrupted with your failed freelance career. Claire gets to live the high life while we're drowning in debt because you can't hold a job. Their voices faded as Burns ushered them into a private conference room, but the damage to their united front was obvious to everyone in the hallway, including Jessica's parents, who looked stunned by what they'd heard. When court resumed, Burns presented settlement terms. Thomas and Jessica would pay for all damages to my property, estimated at $16,800 plus my legal fees. They would sign a legal document acknowledging my exclusive ownership and agreeing never to enter my property without written permission. In exchange, I would not press criminal charges for the forgery and trespassing. Judge Martinez reviewed the terms, then addressed me directly. Miss Walsh, are these terms acceptable to you? I glanced at Thomas, who was staring at his hands, and Jessica, whose perfect facade had crumbled into a mask of hatred and defeat. Yes, Your Honor. I believe they are fair. Very well. I'll approve this settlement, but with one addition. She fixed Jessica and Thomas with a stern look. I'm issuing a restraining order prohibiting both defendants from coming within 500 feet of the plaintiff's property for a period of 2 years. Given the nature of the violations and the evident animosity, I believe this is necessary for Miss Walsh's peace of mind and safety. The gavel fell, and just like that, it was over. In the courthouse lobby, Thomas approached me while Jessica was in the restroom. "Claire, he began, then stopped, seeming unsure what to say. "Save it, Thomas," I said quietly. "You chose your side. I didn't know about the wedding business. I swear. But you knew about the duplicate keys. You knew you were entering my house without permission. You knew about the forged rental agreement." He couldn't meet my eyes. "Jessica said it was the only way. That you'd never share willingly. Did you ever actually ask me? Not demand, not manipulate, but honestly ask." His silence was answer enough. "That's what hurts the most," I continued. "You believe the worst about me, without ever giving me a chance to prove otherwise." "I'm sorry," he whispered. Or are you just sorry you got caught?" Before he could answer, Jessica emerged from the restroom, her eyes red but her posture rigid with anger. She grabbed Thomas's arm. "We're leaving. Now." As they walked away, Jessica's mother approached me hesitantly. "Claire, I owe you an apology. We had no idea." "It's all right, Mrs. Reynolds. You were misled like everyone else. Not just about the house. About you. Jessica told us such terrible things that you were unstable, vindictive." I smiled sadly. "I'm neither of those things. I just wanted to protect what my parents left me." She nodded, seeming to see me clearly for the first time. Thomas was different before her. Kinder. "I know," I said softly. "I remember." 2 weeks later, I received papers from Thomas's attorney. He and Jessica were divorcing. Thomas had moved out of their house and was staying with a college friend. According to industry contacts, he had secured a position at a smaller firm, starting fresh with a more modest salary, but a chance to rebuild his reputation. I didn't reach out to him. Some betrayals cut too deep for immediate forgiveness. But I did send a card to my niece Madison for her birthday, with a note that she was welcome to visit the lake house someday when she was older and without her mother. A year passed before the lake house truly felt like mine again. With the settlement money, I repaired the physical damage, replacing what couldn't be saved and restoring what could. The lipstick message in the boathouse required repainting the entire wall. The slashed kayak was beyond repair, so I purchased a new one in a bright yellow that caught the sunlight as it glided across the water. My mother's wine-stained quilt, after 3 attempts by professional cleaners, had to be carefully cut and repurposed into smaller decorative pillows that now adorned the window seat. The hardest repairs weren't physical but emotional. For months, I'd flinch at unexpected sounds, rush to the windows when car tires crunched on gravel, and double-check the locks before bed. I installed a comprehensive security system with cameras and motion sensors, but technology could only provide so much peace of mind. What helped most was reclaiming the space through new positive experiences. I invited coworkers for weekend barbecues, turning the deck where Jessica had staged her business into a place of genuine laughter and friendship. I adopted a golden retriever named Rusty, who loved swimming as much as I did. His enthusiastic presence filled the house with life and warmth. Gary and his wife Diana became regular visitors, joining me for coffee on Sunday mornings or evening boat rides around the lake. Through them, I met other neighbors who had witnessed Jessica's unauthorized events but hadn't known how to intervene. Gradually, I built a community around me, people who respected boundaries and shared a love for the peaceful lakeside setting. As autumn painted the surrounding forest in brilliant oranges and reds, I received an unexpected email from Thomas. He had completed 6 months of therapy, he wrote, and wanted to apologize properly for his role in the betrayal. He didn't ask to meet or expect forgiveness. He simply wanted me to know he recognized the damage he had caused. I didn't respond immediately. Part of me wanted to delete the message and move forward without reopening that wound. But after a week of reflection, I sent a short reply. "Thank you for the apology. I hope therapy is helping you understand yourself better." We exchanged cautious messages over the following months. Thomas had finalized his divorce from Jessica, who had moved to Arizona with a new boyfriend. He was rebuilding his architecture career with more modest projects that allowed him to be present for Madison during his visitation weekends. He never asked about the lake house or hinted at wanting to visit. Winter blanketed the property in pristine snow. I took a week off work to experience the lake house in its quietest season, something I hadn't done since childhood. Bundled in layers, I hiked the frozen shoreline with Rusty bounding ahead. At night, I built fires in the hearth my father had constructed, sipping hot chocolate and reading books that had nothing to do with network security or data protection. On Christmas Eve, I received a small package from Thomas. Inside was a hand-carved wooden loon exquisitely detailed with a note, remembering how Dad taught us to identify the calls across the water. No expectations, just a memory I wanted to share. Thomas. It was the first gift he had given me since before our parents died. I placed the loon on the mantel beside a photo of our family from happier times, a small bridge across a vast divide. Spring brought renewal in unexpected ways. My company offered me a promotion that would allow more remote work, and I decided to spend entire weeks at the lake house, returning to the city only for critical meetings. The rhythm of longer stays transformed my relationship with the property. It wasn't just a weekend retreat, but truly home. I planted a garden in the sunny patch where my mother had always talked about growing vegetables but never found the time. As I worked the soil, I felt her presence not as a ghost but as a continuation. The lake house was evolving, honoring its past, while creating something new. In May, an email arrived from Patricia Lawson. Jessica had attempted to contest our settlement, claiming financial hardship, but the judge had firmly rejected her petition. The restraining order remained in effect, and Jessica had been warned that further legal actions would be considered harassment. It was the final chapter in a painful story. Or so, I thought, until a warm June evening, when a familiar car pulled into my driveway. Thomas sat inside for several minutes before gathering the courage to step out, careful to remain at the edge of the property in compliance with the restraining order. I walked down to meet him, Rusty at my heels. "I know I shouldn't be here," Thomas said immediately. "I'll leave if you want." "You're at the property line," I acknowledged. "Why are you here, Thomas?" He looked older, thinner, but somehow more substantial, as if the weight he had lost was merely the burden of pretense. "Madison asked about the lake," he said simply. "She remembers swimming here when she was little. She asked if we could ever go back." I studied my brother's face, searching for manipulation or entitlement. I found only sadness and regret. "The restraining order has another year," I reminded him. "I know. I'm not asking to come back now. Or maybe ever." He swallowed hard. "But I wanted you to know that I understand now what this place means. What I helped destroy wasn't just property, it was our history, our parents' legacy." Rusty whined softly, sensing the tension. "You chose Jessica over me," I said quietly, "over and over again." Thomas nodded. "I did. I let her reshape me into someone I didn't recognize, someone our parents would have been ashamed of. And now I'm trying to find my way back. Not to who I was, I can't erase these years, but to who I want to be, someone with integrity, someone who honors boundaries." The setting sun cast long shadows across the lawn where we had played as children. Behind Thomas, a loon called across the water, its haunting cry echoing off the surrounding hills. "Madison is innocent in all this," I said finally. "When the restraining order expires, if you're still on this path, we can discuss supervised visits. For her, not for you." Relief washed across his face. "That's more than I deserve. Thank you." As Thomas drove away, I realized something fundamental had shifted. The lake house was no longer a battleground, but a boundary clear, firm, and mine to manage. I had defended it not out of spite or selfishness, but out of respect for what it represented, the right to protect what matters without apology. That evening, sitting on the dock with Rusty beside me, I reflected on the journey of the past year. The pain had shaped me, but it hadn't defined me. I had discovered strength I never knew I possessed, and built connections that were chosen rather than inherited. The lake house would always carry echoes of my parents and childhood memories shared with Thomas, but now it also held new stories of standing my ground, of rebuilding after betrayal, of creating sanctuary on my own terms. Sometimes the most painful betrayals can lead to the most beautiful beginnings. My lake house isn't just a property anymore. It's a symbol of my journey from heartbreak to healing, and a reminder that I have the power to create the peace I deserve. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself against family members who crossed your boundaries? How did you handle it, and did the experience change your relationship? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more journeys of healing and growth. Remember, protecting your boundaries isn't selfish. It's an act of self-respect that allows you to give your best self to the world. Thank you for listening to my story today. Until next time, this is Claire, wishing you strength on your own path to peace.